Japan is known for being the most careful country on earth. Trains that run to the second. Streets with no bins and no litter. It's the only place where a train company will probably apologize for pulling out of a station 20 seconds early. But behind all of that is a darker Japan. A woman with both legs cut off at the knee, and she stayed awake for 4 hours. A naked man alone in a room for 335 days, and 15 million people watching on national television. A 9-year-old on an operating table, and a form somebody had already signed. None of this is made up. All of it is in the record, because Japan writes things down, and the further down we go, the more disturbing it gets. Let's begin. You hear it before you see it. A scraping behind you at about the height of your knees. Tech, tech, tech. What's making it is the upper half of a woman moving on her elbows, faster than you can run. She was cut in half by a train, and the cold was so severe that her body sealed itself before she could die. What's left of her carries a scythe. What she does with it is make you match. That's the version everyone knows, and there's usually a girl attached to it. A school girl on a level crossing in Hokkaido, sometimes named, sometimes with an age. There's no such girl. I went looking for her first, the way everybody does. No station, no date, no newspaper, no railway record. Nobody who collects these stories in Japan can find her, or say who put her in Hokkaido. Here's what they found instead. The likeliest birthplace isn't Hokkaido, it's Okinawa. In 1980, in an account a reader sent to an urban legend collector called Matsuyama Hiroshi, children in a park see a boy resting his chin on the roof of a parked car. Only his top half comes out from behind it, going tick, tick. No woman, no train. And every region had its own name for it. Pata Pata in Kagoshima, Kodo Kodo in Shiga, Keda Keda in Kanagawa. A folklore survey in 1996 found the whole thing sorted by age. Ask an adult, you got an old woman at her elbows. Ask a student, a young one. Ask a child, tick, tick. Every generation named the sound of a legless thing approaching, and the school ghost story boom of the 1990s flattened them into one. But there is a real case underneath. It's not the one anybody cites, and it's worse than the one they do. The Tokyo Asahi Shimbun, 31st of May, 1935. At about 10 past midnight the previous night, a 20-year-old woman stepped in front of a freight train on the Tobu line at Mokujima in Tokyo. Both her legs were severed at the knee. The wheels crushed the wound shut as they cut, which is why she stayed conscious for about 4 hours. She told officials she had had enough of the world and would not be writing a note. Then she told her brother, who had come to sit with her, that he would get tired and he should go and sleep. That's the part I can't put down. And here's the thing. The one book that ever tied this legend to a real accident gets the case wrong. It puts her near Akabane Station on the Tohoku Main Line. Wrong station, wrong line. So the monster is real in exactly one way. Not a girl on a crossing in Hokkaido. A woman on the Tobu line in Tokyo in 1935, awake for 4 hours worrying about her brother. That's the surface, a legend with nothing underneath it. The next one is a legend people still act on, and you can watch them do it. In the 7th month of 1825 at the Nakamuraza Theater in Edo, a 71-year-old playwright named Saruya Nambuku IV put on a play about a woman named Oiwa. 200 years later, companies staging it still go and ask her first, I'll give you the custom as it's actually practiced, and then what's wrong with the curse behind it. Both halves matter. In the play, Oiwa's husband, Ayman, wants a better marriage. The neighbors send round of medicine and tell her it will do her good. It's poison. In the sense the whole thing is built around, she sits combing her hair, and it comes away in her hands in clumps. And half her face swells and collapses. She sees what she has become, and she dies cursing his name. Her body is nailed to a door and put in a canal. Here's what happens now in this century. Before a production opens, the cast goes to a temple called Myogyo-ji in Nishi-Sugamo, where a red torii marks the path to her grave, then to the Oiwa Inari shrine in Yatsuya. On the site, the Tamaya house is said to have stood on, but across the road to Yunji, where they hold a service to console her and pray for the safety of the run. That's not folklore. On the 8th of May, 2016, Shochikubon Kabuki News Service reported the actor Nakamura Senjaku and Nakamura Shishinosuke doing exactly that before Cocoon Kabuki's production that June. Bunkamura's website records its company doing the same in 2012 and says plainly that this has simply become the custom whenever the play is staged. So the ritual is documented. Here's the problem with the reason for it. I went looking for the deaths. There aren't any. The accidents that circulate in English are a broken leg in 1976 and an electrocuted lightning technician in 1995, both traced to blogs. No name production, no date, no news report. The English Wikipedia article claims injuries and deaths and carries a little tag beside it that says, citation needed. The priest at the Oiwa shrine says he never claimed the curse existed at all. He puts the accidents down to the obvious thing. These were stages worked in the dark, before electricity. So what's actually 200 years old here isn't a curse. It's a professional habit of asking permission from someone who can't give it. Hold on to that. At the bottom of this video, something is going to be done to 25,000 people, and nobody is going to ask them for anything. So far, the record has been folklore. The next one is a place you can stand in, and a tradition you can now count on one hand. There's a volcanic crater in the far north of Honshu where the ground is yellow with sulfur, and the lake is so acidic that the only fish in it is a dace. The landscape has long been read as a literal map of the Buddhist hell. This is Osorizan, Mount Fear. You walk past named hells and a blood pond and a dry riverbed where dead children stack stones forever, and where their parents leave pinwheels, which turn in the sulfur wind. Then the path opens on a white sand and a jade green lake. That part is called Paradise Beach. There's a red arch bridge over a river the wicked are said to see as a mountain of needles, and you were told never to look back while crossing it. You can't cross it now. It's been closed since 2018. And every July at the summer festival, women come here to speak in the voices of the dead. They're called Iteko. Traditionally, they were blind girls taken on at about 11, 12, 13 years old, because in northern Japan, a blind daughter had almost no other way to feed herself. The training was brutal. By one detailed account, it ran to 100 days of 99 cups of cold water a day, 3 weeks into grain or salt, and a final stretch of near total fasting until the candidate collapsed. That collapse was read as the deity arriving. Then she was dressed in red and given red rice, and it was understood as a wedding. Families queued up to 10 hours for 10 or 15 minutes with her. Now, here's the part that reframes the whole thing. And I didn't see it coming. The pairing of Itako and Osorizan isn't ancient. The Perfectual Museum dates it to the end of the Taisho era, about 100 years ago, and the press did the rest. The scholar Omichi Haruka went back through the northern papers. The earliest account she can recover is from 1939, and it says the practice started with one woman. And by then, there were about 5. Then the reporters arrived. Attendance was 30,000 in 1922, 118,000 in 1960, roughly triple the year before, 378,000 by 1974. By 1976, there were more than 40 Aitako at the mountain. By 2013, there were 2. As of March this year, 5 traditionally trained Aitako are left in Japan. 3 of them are 75 or over. 2 of them are not blind. The last one who is blind is Nakamura Tei, age 94, in Hachinohe. There's a sign at her entrance that reads, Aitako, Nakimura, Arrow. She lost her sight to measles when she was 3. Her family asked for all bookings and introductions to stop in October last year. I keep coming back to that sign. The temple's own website now says that in a normal year, Kuchiyose is held. So what's dying at Osorazan isn't a 1,000-year-old rite. It's a media phenomenon about a century old, built on a real trade that was older, smaller, and banned outright in 1873, after which women went on being arrested for it for years. Both things are true. The loss is real either way. From here, the paperwork takes over. Everything below this line is a document behind it, and the documents are the problem. "15 acres of rock, 9 miles off central Nagasaki, about 1/3 of a mile long, walled in concrete on every side until, from the water, it looked like a battleship. That's what people started calling it. In 1959, there were 5,259 people living on it, roughly 215,000 people per square mile. In the residential blocks, closer to 360,000. Underneath it, Mitsubishi was mining coal from shafts that ran out under the seabed, in seams at around 86 degrees and 95% humidity. The mine closed in January 1974. The last residents left on the 20th of April. Nobody has lived there since. And for 35 years, it was illegal to land. That's the island. Here's the argument about it. During the war, Korean and Chinese laborers were brought to Hashima under Japan's mobilization program. How many died depends entirely on who you ask. A wartime diary cited by the historian David Palmer gives about 500 Koreans. Southern Korea's own government commission says about 800, with 122 confirmed dead. A Nagasaki Human Rights Survey adds roughly 200 Chinese on top of that. A Mitsubishi company documents workers brought directly from Korea to, and I'm quoting, difficult spots that would not please Japanese laborers. On the 5th of July 2015, UNESCO inscribed Hashima as a World Heritage Site. Japan's ambassador stood up at the session and said there were a large number of Koreans and others who were brought against their will and forced to work under harsh conditions. And that Japan was prepared to build an information center to remember the victims. Here's where it gets uncomfortable, and I had to check the date twice before I believed it. The same day, Japan's foreign minister issued a statement saying there was no change whatsoever to the position that these claims were settled completely and finally in 1965. And at a press conference also that day, he said that the expressions such as forced to work used in the statement by the representative of Japan did not mean forced labor. The center opened to the public in Tokyo in June 2020. In June 2021, a UNESCO and ICOMOS mission went to see it. They reported that the role of these sites in Japan's military program after 1910 was barely mentioned, that the history of Koreans brought to them was found only in written material inside the research center, and that there was no display that could be characterized as adequately serving the purpose of remembering the victims. The following month, the World Heritage Committee put one sentence on the record. Strongly regrets, however, that the state party has not yet fully implemented the relevant decisions. You can visit Hashima now. More than 95% of it's closed. You get about 45 minutes on a concrete walkway at the southern tip, about 700 feet long. There's no interpretation of forced labor anywhere on that route. Up to here, the argument has been about what a record leaves out. From here down, everything is written, filmed, or filed. And that's what makes it worse. On the 25th of January 1998, a 22-year-old aspiring comedian from Fukushima wins a lottery at a television audition. The prize is the job. He's driven to an apartment. He's told to take off his clothes. The door closes. There's nothing in the room but magazines, a rack of sweepstakes entry forms, and a stack of postcards. He was told he can go home when he has won 1 million yen in prizes, $7,600. His name is Tomoaki Hamatsu. Everyone knows him as Nasubi, which means eggplant. He picked it up at a part-time job for the shape of his face. For the first 17 days, he wins nothing at all. On day 17, he wins 12 cartons of juice. Then, nothing again. He spends about a month living on dog food before he wins a bag of rice. He fills out roughly 200 postcards a day, and the production is spending the equivalent of $2,300 a month on stamps. He hits the target on day 335. 1,164 yen. Now here's where it stops being funny. This is the entire entry. He didn't know it was on television. Every Sunday night, edited into a segment to something like 15 to 17 million people. From October, there was a 24-hour internet stream as well, with a member of staff manually moving a cartoon eggplant over his body to keep him decent. He won a television set. He had no aerial. He never saw any of it. He had been told most of this wouldn't be aired. He never signed a contract. When it ended, they blindfolded him, put earmuffs on him, and walked him out into what he thought was another apartment. It was a set on a stage in front of a live studio audience. The walls fell outward. He said, "My house fell down." The audience laughed. He said, "Why are they laughing?" I've watched that clip. They are delighted. And then he said the line the producer, Tashio Shutiya, still has to sit with. "Do you mean that everyone has been watching my naked body all this time?" He said later that the hardest part was never the hunger, it was the loneliness. Over a year alone, unable to speak to anyone. He said he would rather have died than keep feeling that way. He didn't run, he said, because he was naked and because his father was a police officer and would have lost his job. Sachiya, on camera in a documentary made 25 years later, says that if there is a god of television, he is the devil. Nasubi climbed Everest in 2016 to raise money for Fukushima. He says he has made peace with it and that if you piled up 10 billion yen in front of him, about $63 million, he wouldn't do it twice. Nobody was ever prosecuted for any of it. Nobody ever ruled on it at all. Almost at the bottom, 2 left. I nearly cut this next one, and not for the reason you'd expect. Every version of it online is wrong in the same direction, and the true one is worse. On the evening of the 25th of November, 1988, a 17-year-old girl cycling home from her part-time job in Masato in Sayatama. She was knocked off her bicycle. By the next day, she was in a house in Ace in Tokyo. Her name was Junko Furuta. She was in her final year of high school. She was held in that house for about 40 days. She died on the 4th of January, 1989. I'm not going to describe what was done to her. It is documented and you can find it, and it will not make you understand anything you do not already understand from the sentence I just wrote. What I want to talk about is everybody else. The house was the family home of one of the 4 teenagers who held her. The parents were living in it. An older brother was living in it. In early December, the father heard sounds upstairs and tried to get into the room and was refused. In late December, the parents brought her downstairs, gave her something to eat, told her to go home, and let her out of the front door. Their son went after her and brought her back. They never called the police. The reason they gave on the record was that they were afraid of their son. Beyond the 4, the judgment says many of the group's associates came to the house and took part. you'll see a figure online saying that 100 people knew and none of them reported it. That number is not on the trial record. The real figure was never established, which is its own answer, and nobody found her. 2 of the 4 were arrested early in 1989 over something else entirely, and one of them, thinking the other had already talked, told police where the body was. It was recovered on the 29th of March. Now the sentences. This is why the case is still argued about in Japan. The 4 were 16, 17, 17, and 18, all minors. Prosecutors asked for life for the 18-year-old. In July 1990, the Tokyo District Court gave him 17 years. It gave the second 5 to 10 years, the third 4 to 6, and the fourth 3 to 4. On appeal, the Tokyo High Court said, in effect, this was far too lenient and raised 3 of the 4. The principal went from 17 years to 20 and left the second where he was at 5 to 10. That was the longest indeterminate term the Juvenile Act allowed at the time. To go past it, the court would have had to treat the case as one deserving life imprisonment, and it did not. One more thing. From the sentencing record, the principal's parents sold the family home and paid the Furuta family 50 million yen. In 1990, that was about $345,000. That payment was put before the court in mitigation for this crime. The longest anyone served was 20 years. And here's the bottom. Not a crime the state failed to stop. A program it ran. In late June 1948, the Japanese Diet passed a bill unanimously. It was promulgated on the 30th of July as Law Number 156. Its first article states its purpose: to prevent the birth of inferior descendants from a eugenic standpoint and to protect the life and health of the mother. It was called the Eugenic Protection Law, and it stayed on the books for 48 years. Under it, between 1949 and 1996, 24,993 people were sterilized. About 7 in 10 were women, and 16,475 of those operations were carried out under provisions that required no consent from the person on the table. The conditions were written into a schedule attached to the law: hereditary mental illness, hereditary intellectual disability, marked hereditary physical disease, which is where you find deafness, and hemophilia, severe hereditary deformity, and a category called marked hereditary psychotherapy, under which sits the phrase marked criminal tendency. Hansen's disease was named separately on its own. In 1952, the law was widened to cover conditions that were hereditary at all, and for those a guardian's consent was enough. The person did not have to agree. The person did not have to be told. The youngest people in the official record are 9 years old. Now, was this a law that sat unused? A power the state was quietly embarrassed by. Here's the paperwork. On the 12th of June, 1953, the Ministry of Health and Welfare told every prefecture how the law should be enforced. It says coercion should be kept to the minimum necessary and physical force avoided as far as possible. And then it says that depending on the circumstances, to the extent truly unavoidable, it may be understood as permissible to use means such as physical restraint, the administration of anesthetic, or deception. That's a government circular. It tells officials that tying a person down, drugging them, and lying to them are acceptable methods. In August 1957, the head of the ministry's Public Health Bureau stood up in the House of Councilors and explained that the year's budget had assumed 1,800 of these operations, and the real figure was coming in under it because doctors weren't putting forward enough applications. There was a budget line. It was being missed. And the Hokkaido Prefectural Health Department once published a document to mark passing 1,000 of them. The title translates as looking back on passing 1,000 compulsory eugenic operations. Inside, the idea of people with disabilities having children is described as a mistaken humanism. I read that title 3 times before I believed it. around 59,000 abortions were performed under the same law. The Bar Association puts the total harm at about 84,000. The eugenic provisions were removed in 1996. That was not an apology, no admission, no compensation, no letters to anybody. The first survivor sued in January 2018 in Sendai. In 2019, the Diet passed a lump sum payment of 3,200,000 yen, about $20,000, with an apology attached. Survivors said it did not reach them. It excluded the people who had been made to have abortions. It required victims to come forward and identify themselves to a state that had never once contacted them. By August 2024, out of tens of thousands, 1,129 people had been paid. Then it went to court, and the state made its argument. It did not defend the law. It offered no constitutional argument at all. It argued one thing, which was that the 20-year limitation period had expired. On the 3rd of July 2024, the Supreme Court of Japan sat at the Grand Bench, took 5 cases together, and ruled against it. The eugenic provisions had violated Article 13 and Article 14 of the Constitution. They had been unlawful from the moment they were enacted in 1948 and could not be justified, even judged by the standards of the time. On the limitation period, the judgment says that to hold these claims extinguished would be grossly contrary to the ideals of justice and fairness, and is entirely unacceptable. The state had written a time limit into the system, run the program for 48 years, and then argued in court that the clock had run out. The compensation law came into force on the 17th of January 2025. 15 million yen for a person who is sterilized, about $100,000. 2 million for a person forced to have an abortion, 500,000 for a spouse. The people it is for are in their 70s and 80s. Here is what I came away with. Every country has things that would rather you didn't look up. Japan is one that wrote them down and kept them in triplicate with a covering letter. Nothing in this video had to be dug out of a hole. The Play Zone Theater records the ritual. The Island Zone inscription file records the promise. The ministry recorded the deception it was authorizing, and a Perfectual Health Department printed a document celebrating 1,000. That's the thing I kept turning over. We tell ourselves the worst things happen in the dark, off the books, where nobody signed anything. They don't. They happen at a desk, in a document with a budget line and a name at the bottom. That's where we're going to leave it for today. If you made it all the way down here, through the woman on the Tobu line in 1935, the actors asking a grave for permission, the man who asked why everyone was laughing, and a title with the word 1,000 in it, then you already know what to do. And tell me one thing in the comments. Which of these has Japan actually reckoned with, and which one is still waiting? If I missed one, tell me that too. I read them. Every story in this video was researched and written by me. If you want the next descent, subscribe. There are more icebergs below this one. See you down there.